Proverbs chapter 9. Wisdom has built her house, she has hewn her 7 pillars. We're going to talk today about wisdom. James says, if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask God. Now, wisdom, as we'll see, is an umbrella under which there are several aspects of it that reside. And typically, when we think of wisdom, and I'll point to this pyramid, which says at the bottom, we have data. Does everybody understand what data is? In computer, it's just a lot of ones and zeros. But data is just a phone book would be an example of data. Does everybody understand that? It's just a book filled with data. Next is information. Data is individual facts, figures, signals, measurements. Information is organized, structured, categorized, useful, condensed, and calculated. We have a lot of information. If you watch the Weather Channel, you get a lot of information on what the weather is. Everybody grasp that? Then we move up the food chain to knowledge, which is ideas, learning, notion, concept, synthesized, compared, thought, discussed. Information gives context to data. Knowledge gives meaning to information, and the highest is wisdom, which gives insight to these, understanding, integration, applied, reflected upon, actionable, accumulated principles, patterns, decision-making process. That's typically what we see that information is, wisdom is, resides at the top of that. And the world says as a definition that wisdom is what? Applied knowledge. Okay? That is typically the definition. Agreed? Now there are certainly aspects. There's wisdom in business, there's wisdom in industry, there's wisdom in virtually everything that you can imagine. And so we see yet another one. We have data, which is just a bunch of zeros here. Information gives a little bit color to that. Knowledge begins to organize it. Insight says, oh, here's something here. Wisdom connects those two dots. I'm just using these as examples for us. And then I have another one up here which says data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And all of these are ways to help us to grasp what wisdom is in the world. But Solomon gives us the book of Proverbs. And Solomon, when he wrote Proverbs, I believe, and it is my considered opinion, and if somebody wants to arm wrestle me about this, that's okay. But the book of Proverbs, if parents were looking for a book to guide their children in one concise area, the whole Bible is good. But Proverbs is one of those books that gives us wisdom. And he talks about this in chapter 9 when he says, wisdom has built her house, she has hewn her 7 pillars. I have 7 pillars. That is not really what Solomon is saying, that's what those 7 pillars are. But what does 7 pillars represent? If you read that and say, wisdom has built her house, she has hewn her 7 pillars, what would that mean to you? Something complete? It holds up the building. That's what pillars do. Pillars are a way of holding up. You have your foundation. The pillars are what holds up what's above it. So he says, wisdom, now he could have used any number, but 7 is that number of perfection. As you go through Scripture, and especially when you get to the book of Revelation, you begin to understand that numbers have a specific meaning. Well, that's 7 pillars. Well, within the umbrella of wisdom are the 7 pillars. If we were moving left to right, and again, if you'd like to arm wrestle me on this, feel free to, or you disagree with it, but wisdom begins with knowledge. All in favor of that? I do that. Okay, I have one hand. We can move on from there. And instruction, built into instruction is discipline. Now, when I say discipline, what do we think of? Homework. I hadn't heard that one in a while. Homework. Discipline means guidance. We don't want to use the S word, do we? Spanking. Okay, that's typically what we think. But there is so much more to discipline than spanking. Discipline, if I were to ask someone here that has perhaps a background or an understanding of, what's the word I'm looking for? Things such as karate, jiu-jitsu. Senior moment. Martial arts. What do they call the study of martial arts? It's called a discipline. It's a discipline. It's a way of disciplining the body. Paul talks about disciplining his body as well. But discipline goes along with instruction. Then we come to understanding. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't move on to these until we have completely extinguished everything there is to know about knowledge. Then we can go on to instruction. When we finish that, no. These are all work together, but then we have understanding. Somebody give me a working definition of understanding. Understanding is knowledge.
I would say discipline is an organization which gives you a framework, and then that would lead
Okay. I have a book which has diagrams of how to do anything, and I'll age myself here, and I'll say, here's a diagram on how to program a VCR. And for you young ones here, a VCR was, never mind. I still don't understand it. But here's the diagram. Well, a diagram is just a diagram until I'm taught an understanding of what it all means. I can be given a diagram of a blueprint of a house. And if I don't know anything about blueprints, it's just a picture. And after all, what color are blueprints? They're blue. But once I have been given an instruction, once I learn the discipline of building trades, I begin to have an understanding of what these mean. Now we come to something called virtue. And somebody give me an example of what a virtue is. You don't have to define it, but give me a virtue. What's a virtue? Honesty. Another. Doing what's right. Compassion. Trustworthy. Integrity. Okay? So we see that built into this virtue is part of wisdom. For you can have knowledge, you can have instruction, and you can have understanding. But if I don't have these, then really I'm stuck here in the building trades, aren't I? But once I have virtue, then I begin to understand. Somebody give me a definition of what a virtue is. Positive attributes. The woman of Proverbs 31, she is sometimes called the woman of virtue or the woman of, starts with excellence. Oh, I gave it away. Virtues are excellences. Then we move into insight, then to discretion, and then to prudence. All of these, as we move further, and if I could use another building analogy, how far up can you build a building? As high as the foundation is deep. And there is a formula, and if I ask Rob this, Rob's shaking his head no, Rob disagrees with that. Rob, I don't have a foundation. How long will that thing stand? Okay? Every time I go by a building site, and they're going to build a skyscraper, they spend weeks and months drilling down. I'll use the Mackinac Bridge. How many of you understand how much weight is below the water level of the Mackinac Bridge? It all works together, but without that foundation and those caissons, that bridge would not last the 1,000 years that it is. But it is the foundation. You cannot go any higher than your foundation is deep in wisdom. You come to things such as insight. And what is insight? It's understanding. It's deeper than understanding. Let me give you a couple of, give you some synonyms for this. In insight, Strong's Hebrew Dictionary, sometimes translated from the Hebrew hakal, it means circumspect, intelligent, to understand, to guide wittingly. In Proverbs, to know, the instruction to understand words of insight. Insight. We give you some synonyms of insight. If I were to go to a dictionary, a modern English, the power or act of seeing into a situation. How is that different from simple knowledge, instruction, understanding, and virtue? How do those first four allow you to have insight into a situation?
Knowledge is just the facts. Insight is understanding how the facts work together and how they influence your actions, your thoughts,
Good.
actions and thoughts of others.
The act or result of apprehending the inner nature of things or of seeing intuitively. You're drinking from a fire hose right now, aren't you? But all of these are working from left to right with ever-increasing ability to gain wisdom. We start out by teaching the ABCs to children. Anybody start out by teaching children foreign languages before they know what an ABC is? Now, some parents and grandparents say, well, my child's pretty smart. I think they're speaking Latin when they're just saying goo goo gaga. But nevertheless, but we understand that in order for a child to read, that they must have a basic understanding of the alphabet. We give them the little cards that say A is for apple. I had to think there for a moment. Everything in that. That's the knowledge. Then we begin to teach them words, sentences, but they all have a progression of learning. Parents, does that make sense to us? You can't start too far in advance until you have given them the foundation of this. A synonym for insight, wisdom. Now, we often say, well, that person has wisdom. But to understanding that the wisdom is so much more than just the correct application of information. It is perhaps in the real world, but in Scripture, it is so much deeper. And as you go through the book of Proverbs, you begin to see these words used over and over, and not just in Proverbs. Go to the New Testament and look those words up. And you begin to see when Paul and Peter and Jesus begin to use the words further on down the road, they have a specific meaning to it. The synonym for insight would be wisdom, perception, discernment, sagacity, wit, power, astuteness, percipience. When was the last time you used percipience in a language, in a sentence? Percipience. And that's not a fruit, that's persimmon. Understanding, perceptivity, intellect, brilliance, sapience, sensitivity, sense, acumen, reason, acuity, sageness, judiciousness, logic, cleverness, braininess. And I haven't heard that with my name in the same sentence. Judgment, smartness, prudence. A lot of these, how many of you like Venn diagrams? You know, the circles within circles and all that. Circles, they begin to give us, and some of these are going to be overlapping as we use them in our regular English nomenclature. We use one word, say, I love something. Well, how many different definitions are there of love? I love Donato, but I love Janine. What's the difference? There's a big difference. We use the same word, but they have nuances of difference in there. So as we look at insight, then we come to discretion. Discretion comes from the root word, which is discreet. What does it mean to be discreet? To be discreet. To know there's a time and a place. To use discretion, to be discreet about what you say, who you say it to, when to say it. Discretion. An individual choice of judgment. See how smart she is? And see the gal sitting next to her? She has the same thing. The power of free decision or latitude of choice within certain legal bounds reached the age of discretion. Boy, there's a mouthful. The quality of having or showing discernment or good judgment. The quality of being discreet. Circumspection. Cautious reserve in speech. I'll use a rather base example. Sometimes I have diarrhea of the mouth and constipation of the brain. Is that plain enough? I talk before I think. Have you ever known people other than me that do that? But discretion means I'm going to wait to speak. Discretion, as an example, might be when the woman was caught in adultery. And when Jesus looked down and he was drawing on the ground, who left first?
The accusers.
The accusers. They were all accusers. The older ones left first. They were the first one to have that aha moment. And who was the last one to leave? The ones who were less likely to have that aha moment. So there was discretion and discernment involved in that. A synonym for discretion would be prudence, wit, wisdom. See how that wisdom always comes into that? Sense, common sense, sensibleness, judgment, brains, logicalness, foresightedness, gray matter. How many people have heard of gray matter? If you're in science, they talk about this thing up here that has wrinkles and gray matter. I don't understand it all the time. Street smarts, discreetness, intelligence, gumption, insight, logicality, practicality, discrimination, foresight, perspicacity, sagacity, shrewdness, keenness. An antonym is the opposite. The opposite of discretion would be, here's one, wait for it, indiscretion. Carelessness, idiocy, heedlessness, imprudence, stupidity, unreasonableness, short-sightedness, foolishness, half-wittedness, brainlessness. See how those are far apart? So we've moved into, with these, you begin to build upon it. At what age does a child get insight? It depends on the child. Nobody's going to fall for that one, are they? A child gets insight. Can a child get insight without being taught these things? Is a child going to be naturally wise? Solomon would say, a child left to themselves is a disgrace to their mother. On one hand, we have those who say, the kid will learn it. They'll learn it on the streets, they'll learn it in school, they'll learn it. All the way to the other end, the parent says, I'm the parent. I'm the adult here. It is my responsibility to teach the child. And maybe somewhere in the middle, I won't go there. But then we come down to, as we've got through insight and discretion, we get down to prudence. Anybody know who Dear Prudence is? First one to get that gets 5 stars today. Who's Dear Prudence? a famous quilt. I'll give you 4 stars for that. There it is. It's a song from the White Album, Dear Prudence. What a day today. But that's not the prudence being talked about. Prudence is shrewdness. Jesus said, I want you to be gentle as doves and wise as a serpent. What did he mean? What did he mean when he says, I want you to be as gentle as a dove, but wise as a serpent? And how can you be wise as a serpent unless you know what a serpent is like? Paul would say, we are not unaware of Satan's devices. How does one get to be aware of what Satan's devices are? It's all there. There is something today called, I'm trying to think of the right term, scams. Anybody get scam calls? You answer the phone, and if you're like me, you're just listening and say, wow, that's too good to be true. That is a great deal. Where can I sign up and how much does it cost me? And after 50 or 60 times, then I catch on, I think this is a scam. You get texts on your phone. Let's see, what's the popular one now? Oh, my little electronic device that gets me through the tolls. We're about to shut you down because you have not paid your last toll. Yeah, the Easy Pass. And I'm thinking, is this real? Well, how do I figure out? Which one of these do you think is the best one to figure out that it's a scam? There are no wrong answers on this one. It's insight. It really is. It's insight. We could have discretion. We could have prudence. Here's some words for prudence. The ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. Sagacity, or shrewdness in the management of affairs. Skill and good judgment in the use of resources. Caution or circumspection as to danger or risk. You remember a time when you believed everything that someone told you? We have moved on, haven't we? Some of you have moved on and some of us haven't. We simply can't believe everything that's told us. But how do we come to those judgments? How do we teach children that you can't believe everything that people tell you? Now, some people say, I don't even stop at stop signs because I don't believe everything I read. That might be a little bit too far to the left. But how do we begin to teach that you need to use what when someone is telling you something? A little bit of all of that, isn't it? So you see how wisdom is the umbrella of which these 7 reside. And I call them the 7 pillars. Those aren't necessarily the ones, because Solomon does not call them that, those 7 pillars. He doesn't name the 7 pillars. But under those 7 is wisdom. All of these. And it begins with knowledge. And what kind of knowledge is it a good idea to teach children? God's Word. That's why we have kids in Bible classes. It's why you tell them bedtime stories about the Bible. It's why you read to them. That's where knowledge begins. Because thy word is what? It's a lamp unto my feet and a light to my way. Thy word is truth. And in a world that says, have you ever had someone tell you, there is no truth? You ever heard somebody say that? There is no truth. Oh, you have truth, but it's not my truth. Now imagine being educated in a system that says there is no truth. Imagine that. So we begin with that knowledge. And how long does it take? When do you stop giving your children knowledge? When you die, yes. It's a never-ending process. It isn't something that you get to a certain age and say, well, you've got enough knowledge. You don't. How many of you have heard me tell about the piece of paper that has 4 words on it in my wallet? I haven't told you that? Oh! There's a young man sitting in the back. Nope. Those wouldn't be 4 bad words. Wonder, truth, love, and security. Those are the 4 words. And that piece of paper is getting a little worn now because every once in a while I pull it out. Do as I do, not as I say. Do as I say, not as I do. But as I'm driving down the road, I was heading down to Indiana, and I was listening to a program, and these 4 words were repeated. So I, like a good person, no, I didn't pull over and write it down. I wrote it down as I was driving, so do not do that. It wasn't a good idea. But I didn't want to miss that opportunity, because in the beginning, children have wonder. And why do children have wonder? Everything is new to them. It's all new to them. They're crawling on the floor, and what do they do with things that they find? They put it in their mouth. I don't know why. Children psychologists could answer that, but they have a wonder in this world. And we should never lose that wonder in life, that wonder that causes us to read the Bible every day. Even if we've read it before, but perhaps we have never read it, is to read the Bible, to have that absolute awe of God's Word, that wonder. And we should instill that wonder into children. And the next one is truth. So in the beginning we have children that wonder, and they're learning things. The next thing is they are discovering truth. When they discover truth, it may hit them like a wall, because they will hear things on one side, but then they'll see people doing something different. They will hear of a judge who is supposed to be ruling in righteousness over our land. Whether it's a local judge, a state judge, whatever it is, Supreme Court judge, whatever it is, but then they see that this judge has been convicted of a crime. And what would one think about a judge who is convicted of a crime? There's supposed to be truth, but they're not seeing the truth, and they're questioning truth. We call that age teenagers. Have you heard of them? Teens. They're questioning everything because they want to know, is what you are telling me the absolute truth? Then why aren't you doing it? Next is love. They also discover that when they're teens. For boys, I say boys discover love and soap at about the same time. Was that my outside voice? Hopefully they haven't stopped finding wonder in the world. And hopefully they haven't stopped or become discouraged when they see that there are different definitions of truth in the world, but there really is only one truth. They discover what love is. And the last one is security. As we get older, I tend to think about the older I get. Let's see, that's the beginning, that's the end. I'd like to say that in my life, I'm right about here. I've lived about half my life because I'm years old. But there's a song that says, we're nearer today than we were before. I'm nearer to the end of my life than I am at the beginning. I tend to think more about security. I still have a wonder in this world. I'm still searching for truth. I still think about love. But security is taking a larger and larger part of my life. And those 4 words. And I find them couched in each one of those. Is the wonder of how God has put all of these things in wisdom. Because, as I said, that wisdom is the big umbrella. Well, that person is wise. But they may have more of one of these than another. But to gain all 7 of these. And you may say, well, what about this or what about that? But those 7 are a pretty good description of areas that encompass all of wisdom. We come back to, if you want to turn to Proverbs chapter 2. Proverbs chapter 2. I've said it several times, but the first 9 chapters of the book of Proverbs are really lectures, or what's the other term I'm looking for? Theses. Things he wrote are really things that he is writing to a child. After, beginning with chapter 10, they are all individual proverbs that he gives. But chapter 2, beginning verse 1. My son, here's the next word, if. What does if imply? You might or you might not. There's a choice here. If you receive my words and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom, and inclining your heart to, here's another one, understanding. Yes, if you call out for, there's insight, and raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk in integrity, guarding the paths of justice and watching over the way of his saints. Then, here's the if part. We began with the if part. Then you will understand righteousness and justice and equity, every good path. For wisdom will come into your heart, and knowledge will be pleasant to your soul. Discretion will watch over you. Understanding will guard you, delivering you from the way of evil, from men of perverted speech, who forsake the paths of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in perverseness of evil, men whose paths are crooked, and who are devious in their ways. Did you catch some of those words? They're not all in here, but throughout the book of Proverbs, all of these are covered. If you receive those, if you seek it, if you call out for wisdom. How we do that? James says, if anybody wants wisdom, God will give it to you. What's the caveat? But he must ask in faith, not doubting. Which means, if you seek it like silver and search for it as hidden treasures. Anybody have metal detectors here? There we go. It's always laying on top of the ground, isn't it? Not really. If you have a metal detector, you might hear the sound. And I don't know, what's that sound like, Memphis?
It makes different sounds.
Woo! Woo! When you hear that, you don't see it, so you just keep going, right? No. You got to dig for it. Some of that's way down there. you seek it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasure. You ever known somebody that's been obsessed by hidden treasure? I heard yesterday about the train wreck of Ashtabula, Ohio. And who was the hymn writer that was killed in the Ashtabula train wreck? Philip Bliss. Philip Bliss was killed there. It is also said that there were 60 bars of gold that went down with that train, supposedly never found. And there are people, when they hear of this, they will spend their lives trying to find this. There are people that way. They seek for it as for hidden treasure. I want a new car. What's involved in getting that new car? What is it? Got to have a job. It's not enough just to want a new car. Because you're not going to walk on the lot and say to the salesman, I want a new car. And he says, well, let me go get the keys and just go ahead and take it. Don't worry about paperwork, it's yours. Anybody had that experience? Nobody. Unless you hit a hole in one. Then you get a car. But if you want a new car, there are steps to it. To want it means you're willing to do things for it, legally and honestly. Anything that we want, as the old saying goes, anything worth having is worth working for. So we say, God, I want wisdom. I read this in James chapter 1, and I read it here in Proverbs chapter 2. I want wisdom. And tomorrow or today when I go home, I just close this up and put it back on the shelf and go on with my daily life. How bad do I want that? Not bad enough to seek it. Not bad enough to search for it. But bad enough to say I want it. We make it sound as though it is making a list for Santa Claus. I want a puppy, and I want a pouty, and I want an easy bake oven, and then just wait for it to come wrapped underneath the tree. But wisdom's not that way. And to discover all of these in there, that they're just waiting for you to get them. They really are. They are just waiting like treasure on top of the ground. Anybody ever heard the story of the acres of diamonds? Man has a piece of property, and he walks over this stream, and he sees the glittering in the stream, passes right by without realizing that those were just filled with diamonds until somebody else discovered it. We walk right over it. God says, it's there. I'll give it to you. It's there. I'll give it to you. And I'm not stingy about it either. I'll give you all you want. And you spend the rest of your lifetime searching for those hidden treasures. And you may do it for decades and read over a verse and say, aha, it's been revealed to me this day. Paul told Timothy, he says, I know some of these things are hard to understand, and I'm hoping that God will reveal these things to you. How God did it for Timothy as Paul described it, I don't know. But I'm fairly certain that when God says, ask me for wisdom and I'll give it to you, that he has it right here. Now you can put this underneath your pillow at night, and I use this example a lot. You can put that underneath your pillow and you can sleep on it, and you know what you'll have in the morning? A stiff neck, yeah. I'm glad somebody got that one. You can do that, or you can pry open those pages, and it'll be there waiting for you. And the first bell rang, and I've done an awful lot of talking. Questions and comments? Some people saying, that's too easy. It's too easy. Can't be that easy. I don't agree with what you put up there. Or somebody offering to come and help me clean up those eggs.
I think it's interesting that David, and we assume he had some wisdom, he got it when
Yes, surrounding yourself with people that you can trust, be advisors who aren't afraid to say, let's consider another aspect. I have a lot of those people around me. Anyone else?
When you were asking what discipline meant, as an ex-Latin teacher, comes from, the word discipline comes from the Latin word discipulo, which means to teach, and from the word discipulus, which means student. So it is teaching and learning.
Where we get the word disciple is a learner. And a learner is one who's been instructed. You got the fire hose version of this. I presented this over a weekend to a group of men. But I thought it was interesting to go over this, and I know there was a lot to take in. I have some booklets here if you want them. If that's it, I'm waiting for the second bell. If nobody has anything else to say, you get out of here early. Go get yourself some wisdom.